Hi everyone, and welcome back to the OurMFC channel. It's awesome to be back. We've got an absolute full house today. Ben is back, Matty's here with me again, and we've got a very, very special guest in former Boro striker Malcolm Christie. How's it going, mate? You all right?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, it's nice to reminisce in some respects of my career, and I think there was a few unanswered questions, should I say, from my time at Middlesbrough, which, I'd like to obviously put straight and get the real side of the story across from my time there. So thanks a lot for coming, getting me on and giving me the opportunity to have the platform to air my story, really.
No, the pleasure's all ours, really. Before we got started on this call, Matty was just telling us about how he told his dad, and his dad was over the moon with you coming on. So no, it's a pleasure for us to give you that platform to be able to voice, some of the things that people might not have known that's gone on and things like that. But yeah, we'll get straight into it then. So
yeah.
Starting right at the very, very beginning then, kind of your childhood and growing up, what was that like for you and in that respect?
Yeah, I was born and raised in a small town in Lincolnshire called Stamford. I was there for 19 years of my life before I obviously became a professional footballer and went off to live in Derby. So it turns out that Stamford's one of the most desirable places to live. It's always in like the top 10 of the Sunday Times, best places to live. But in all fairness, when you grow up somewhere, you don't appreciate what you're growing up around, and it's like the place they go and they film all these period dramas and things like that. It's like one of the finest stone-built towns in England. And I just took it for granted because I was just born and raised there. I went to primary school, secondary school, had my paper round there, worked at the local supermarket, as I'm sure we'll get on to, in Stamford. Just lived a normal life. Went to Stamford College, which was opposite where I lived in Drift Road, where the Stamford Leisure Centre is, and the college is opposite. So I did 3 years at college. And never ever once really did I think that, I know obviously we'll get on to later where my book's called The Reality of the Dream, where I ever thought that I would be a footballer, because I didn't turn professional until 19. So I think that's where my story kind of stands on its own, because I almost lived a footballer's life. It's like any one of you guys just loving football and just playing football, and then within a 6-month period, suddenly you're a professional footballer in the Premier League. And I know that's me saying, "Oh well, yeah, that didn't happen quite like that." But honestly, that's exactly how it happened. Within 6 months of me working at the supermarket, playing for my brother's fruit and veg Sunday League team, I was signed as a striker in the Premier League. So that's how quickly things changed for me, and that's really what the book goes into, is how I adapted from being almost plucked out of, it's like plucking an alien out of space or whatever, and just putting him in any situation that he didn't really know how you dressed. And that's really where the story goes, is me dealing with that, and everyone saying, "Oh, that must have been amazing. That must have been fantastic." But when I look back and I can reflect, it really had its challenges as well.
Yeah.
Well, dreams still alive. Dreams still alive.
Especially when you look at footballers' journeys, like that one seems very, very unique. Like it seems like it stands out from a lot of them. And it's like, obviously that would have been quite a you've thrown in at the deep end, so to speak. And that you don't really hear that nowadays when footballers talk about their careers and how they turned into professionals. It's quite unique, that one.
No, and I don't think, I know I've done a little bit of research, and I was thinking, do you know what? Has there ever been anyone that's taken that journey, that sort of like unbelievably high journey in a short space of time? I mean, there's the odd sort of, people coming from nowhere and playing in the Premier League. I think there was that like Ali Daei. Do you remember him when Graham Souness, George Weah's cousin or something? So he ended up playing in the Premier League, but obviously that was like a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
But before me and since me, there hasn't been anybody. And then I don't know, the way that football is now and the amount of money that's involved and how high profile the Premier League, I don't think there'll ever be a footballer that'll ever take the journey I had, as in never be at a professional academy as a kid, which I wasn't. I was never signed to any club as a kid. Be signed to a Premier League team, make their debut in the Premier League, and to represent the country as well.
Yeah.
So when you nail that down, I know you talk about unique journeys. You think, yeah, everyone has their own unique journey in that respect, of course. But honestly, I don't think that will ever happen again. And saying them 4 things has never happened before.
Yeah.
So that's where the unique part of sort of my journey and my story in football all came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty mental. So talking about your journey, kind of bringing it back, not quite to the start, we're not going to talk about your birth or anything.
No, I don't remember that.
But how did you get into football originally? Was it influence from family or friends? How did it all start, really?
I just think it's something that my dad liked football, and he bought me a Manchester United shirt from a jumble sale. I remember it was a white away kit. Manchester United, Adidas, I think, were the manufacturers of the kits at the time. I remember my dad telling me about George Best, he was like his favourite player and things. And although when I was a kid, Man U weren't the force that they later became. And I'm so glad I picked Man United in many respects, because I lived through quite a number of years where it was my brother. So I picked Man U and my brother picked Everton. And Everton and Liverpool were the two teams in like the mid 80s when I won 79. So sort of 85, 86. It was like a domination between them two teams. Yeah. So my brother chose Everton because obviously they were up there. I don't know why I chose Man U. Maybe just because, like I said, my dad chose about the history. But from an early age, I had an older brother. So we'd, opposite where we lived in Stamford, before the leisure centre was built, there used to be the college, grass, the greenland of the Stamford College. So there was an 11-a-side pitch. So I could literally come out of the front of my house, cross the road, and there was an 11-side pitch with full-size goals. Yeah. So it couldn't have been any better, really, for what I wanted, just to go on and just take a ball. And my dad, at night, he would call us in or shout us in. And so we spent all of our time after school, weekends, just playing football on that field opposite. And then, obviously, loads of kids from the area and that come down, and we'd just play, like the kids would do, game of World Cup or whatever. Yeah, but I was always playing against older kids, because my brother's like 2-3 years older than me. So it was always a case of I was quite smaller, but I think because I was always trying to get away from people and take people on and run away. I don't know, I think I just developed the pace a little bit from there. And I ended up becoming quite quick. But I think I didn't really feel like I was developing my football, really quickly. I just played it at school, played it primary school, secondary school. And I didn't join a youth team or a proper football team until I was 13. And that's quite old.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not even like you were playing football for a proper club since you were a really young age.
No.
13 is kind of when, you've been playing with your mates for a proper team for a good 5-6 years.
Yeah. I train kids nowadays. I'm starting them, anywhere from sort of 6, 7, 8 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, my word, I never started my journey with proper coaching and stuff like that. Yeah. I was almost self-taught up until the age of 13. Yeah. And my mum saw an advert in the local paper for a team looking for some players. In all fairness, that's how it started. There was no football clubs in the locality where I was in Stamford. It was always it seemed to be a little bit behind with times. Peterborough was the local city nearest,
right?
And Peterborough had a local league. So it was a team called Northborough at under 13 level where I started my football journey at under 13s. And then just straight away when I was sort of playing in a team, they ended up putting me up front. I was pretty quick, and just realised that even from that age, that it was all about, for me, was about scoring goals.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't ever want to be, a defender, a goalkeeper, any other position. I just loved that feeling of getting the ball and scoring. And that feeling from that sort of under 13, that's what kept the desire for me to be a goal scorer throughout my career. You know, I always used to love the sound of the ball hitting the back of the net and the euphoria, that instant buzz. No matter what level you were playing at, it kind of gave you that feeling and that buzz. And I only stayed at Northborough for 1 year, one season, because my dad, I think, felt it, that he probably saw that I was quite good compared to other kids. So he thought, right, we'll probably need... I was playing in the second division there, so I wasn't even in like the top division of the under-13s. So I ended up joining the team in the first division, which was a team called Deeping Rangers, which I ended up starting at under-14 level and played right the way through. So 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, 18s, and then they had 4 men's teams. So the setup for me really was perfect.
Yeah.
They had a B team, an A team, a reserve team, and a first team. The first team used to play with it was a tiny little stand. So it was always, you know, you always wanted, as you were playing up the levels, I hope one day I can play on the first team's pitch.
Yeah.
And for me, being involved in that club, that was all really, I was quite happy getting in the first team at Deeping. That was my aspiration. I was at college, I was working part-time at the supermarket, and come sort of 18 years when I'd sort of left the youth team set up there and gone into the men's league, I didn't play that many men's games, in all fairness. I didn't, you know, there was only a few games played. So the rapid rise for me from sort of getting through into the youth team up to men's football, and then I get this opportunity to go to Nuneaton Boro, which for me, I never expected even that jump to happen.
Yeah.
It's really where my sort of journey was going and things. And it was just a total random request. And like a scout had spotted me. Like, I thought scouts was something you went to on a Sunday afternoon. Do you know what I mean? And just like, whereas suddenly somebody had spotted me playing, and I'm like, wow, this is... And me and my dad was sort of like living the dream a little bit of like, oh, wow, we've been spotted. But, you know, Nuneaton weren't, you know, they weren't a professional team. They were a semi-professional in the Doc Martens Premier, which was the league below the conference.
Right, okay.
But I'd sort of heard of them, that they played in the FA Cup. So that sort of resonated with me a bit. Thought, oh, they must be good because they've played in the FA Cup. And like, I've watched the FA Cup on telly, and I'd love to play in that one day.
Yeah,
and
just putting two and two together.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, if I can play in the FA Cup, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah.
But no sooner had I sort of gone over and done what I'd needed to do at Nuneaton, as in like play trial matches and, you know, played for their reserve team, that, you know, in a very short space of time, suddenly I was being offered like a semi-professional contract, which for me was massive, because for the previous like 6-7 years, obviously my dad had been paying the subs, you know, the £5 a week or whatever to play. Then all of a sudden I'm getting this semi-pro contract put in front of me that like me and my dad are in dreamland about, because, you know, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't the realms of the money that, you know, the in Premier League terms, but to be paid, you know, X amount of money every week and a little bit of a win bonus and a goal bonus, you know, and being in a league where by this stage I'm sort of 18, just turning 19, where I feel like, you know, I'm pretty quick, you know, I'm quicker than everybody. I've got an eye for goal. I can get on the end of things. And the Nuneaton move was just a perfect move for me. They signed a load of new players at the same time as me, experienced players that knew the league. And we just started off that following season. So I'd only joined the Nuneaton in the April. So I'd played in the April, May, had pre-season there, and we started the season in the August, and I'd signed into Derby County in the October. So that's how quickly it happened.
Wow.
So it was only August, September, October. So it was 3 months. I played about 12 league games, 1 FA Cup game. So I did play in the FA Cup. So that was a big tick.
Yeah.
And in them 14 games, I'd scored like 13 goals or something like that. So, you know, almost ran at a goal a game. And at that level, if you're a young kid doing well, getting the eye, then all of a sudden, them scouts that were coming to watch me at Deeping Rangers, or that one scout, I say all these scouts, that one scout, that solitary scout that watched me at Deeping Rangers, suddenly it was like tenfold at Nuneaton, because they were like, well, who's this kid scoring every week?
Yeah.
And it
becomes Chinese whispers, doesn't it? Oh, have you heard about that kid that's scored so-and-so goals in so many games?
Yeah, and it was just, I sort of say that, it was just the perfect club for me, because they saw me as someone they could sell as well. Because
Yeah.
they wanted, it was non-league. They wanted some money. They could see that I could probably be sold for a few quid.
Yeah.
And it was local, as in it was really central, like Nuneaton. When you look at it on the map, it's like bang in the middle of England.
Yeah.
So everywhere's kind of local. So if anyone wanted to come and look, I wasn't like playing on the south
Miles
coast.
away, yeah.
So like Derby was pretty close, Coventry, Leicester. So all these teams, and obviously all around the country, they have scouts and stuff like that. And they used to send scouts to watch me play and things. And then all of a sudden, hearing that professional teams are coming to watch me and were scouting me and looking at me and things, it was great. I loved it. People were saying, oh, that must have been a bit of pressure, but not in the slightest. I never felt the pressure because everything happened so quickly. It was just like, right, how quickly I've done this jump, and I could almost see me being a professional footballer at that point. So there was no pressure on me because I was thinking, well, I'm on this almost crest of a wave. Just keep riding it. Do you know what I mean?
And of course, there.
And it
as long as you can.
That's exactly how it happened. I just kept going. I just kept letting me football do the talking. And that's a bit of a cliche, but I did. Yeah. I tried to score in every game because I knew that even if I didn't play particularly well, if I could grab the headlines and score the goal, then, that's sometimes people are looking at that. And I had a couple of experiences at league clubs. So Leicester had me on trial. So did Tottenham Hotspur. But they were basically smoke screens for me to get a bit more exposure. Yeah. I mean, my manager at the time, Brendan Phillips, was brilliant. He almost acted as a role as agent, really. He was trying to, he knew people in clubs, and he thought, well, if I can get him there, even though there's probably no chance of him signing there, it'll be in the newspaper and everyone will be. So my profile suddenly from this kid who they signed from sort of nowhere, suddenly my profile was like sky high. Yeah. And I think that just sort of, it was almost like who's going to come up with the money first. That was really where we were at. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was only 55,000 that Derby ended up paying for me. Yeah. So it was a drop in the ocean considering, what the sort of money they were paying for players and selling players for. I mean, that was nothing. It was like...
Oh, of course. But I mean, how old were you at that point? Like
19, yeah. I turned 19 in the April.
Yeah, so you just turned 19. And although obviously, in football, £55,000 is not a lot of money, but to think that someone paid what would be a lot of people's yearly wage for you at 19, how did that feel? That must have felt good.
Yeah, looking back as I talk about it, it doesn't seem a lot of money, but it did at the time.
Yeah, of course.
It did at the time, because sort of for somebody to sign me and things, and then there were some add-ons as well. So if I was to play in the Premier League, there was like another 25 grand. If I played a certain amount, I think it was 20 Premier League matches, there was another 25. So with all these add-ons, it added up to about 130,000, which in terms of non-league transfers, it's not in the realms of, I think Jamie Vardy's the record one, isn't he? £1 million, I think.
Something like that,
Vardy in non-league. But it was considering it helped Nuneaton's coffers, and I was there a really short amount of time, but if I hadn't have gone to Nuneaton at that particular time, I would never have made it all of a sudden, that huge leap from non-league to the Premier League would never have happened if I hadn't have joined Nuneaton at that time. So I had a lot to thank them for, the platform, the level, the fact that they had a stand and a ground where it took in sort of it played in front of like 3,000 supporters. Well, yeah, you can understand or imagine what that felt like for me, because I was playing in front of one man and his dog at Deacon Rangers. So that was absolutely huge. But yeah, just happened so quickly, so fast. Didn't have a time to breathe, in all fairness, but was absolutely delighted to be signed into Derby County in the Premier League in, like I say, in October '98 when the move finally happened for me.
Yeah.
And then obviously when you got to Derby, I mean, what was that like as a club and kind of you start there? Because I know we've got it down. Your first start for Derby, I think he scored 2 goals against Boro, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
My first full start was against Boro, but it was kind of a bit of a strange thing for me because suddenly, I'd not even at Nuneaton Borough. I trained once a week. I'd never trained more than once a week at any club, and I'd played like maybe once or twice a week. So we might play on a Tuesday, train Thursday, and play Saturday.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden,
that was it. And then that was it. Yeah.
Like I'm training every single day as like my job, and I think that's where it became a little bit hard and things like that for me because suddenly going from something that you always wanted to do, and then that reality is that that's what you're doing every day was good because the club was right that I joined as well because Derby County wasn't a club which had like 50 players and I was suddenly going to be forgotten about. Derby was a club that like only had a small squad, so I went in there. I mean, he gave me the squad number 12 straight away. I remember thinking, oh my God, like I just thought I'd go in there, be squad number like 43 or 39
be like
or
a fringe
whatever.
Player.
And Ashley Ward left Derby. He was number 12. He left just before me, and he gave me Ashley Ward's number. And I was thinking, even though psychologically it's still not like a 1 to 11, I was thinking, well, that's like next best thing, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
And I just remember like, oh my God, I've got to, just little things like that. You've got a squad number in a Premier League team. You're going to wear a kit where like you've got the Premier League badges on your arms and stuff like that. It was just,
it's the little things at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's really where, again, I suppose my story as its uniqueness is, like, I almost went from football fan to footballer with no transition.
Yeah. You were just one's there and then one's straight there.
Yeah, because I really was, and I know this is like, I know everyone can say this. I was like a big I loved football. I loved watching it, playing it. Like Man U, I had everything attributed to Man U. My bedroom, videos, like duvet covers, like curtains, posters. Like I had everything. And in the book, it shows a picture of me in my bed in my bedroom at Drift Road in Stamford, and hopefully people will understand when they see that just how much Manchester United and how much I was like a supporter. And I still had when I turned into a professional, I still have all these posters on the wall of all these players, and like I was a big autograph collector as well, like an autograph hunter. I was into that. So if I'd buy a magazine like Shoot or Match, like I'd cut out the posters that were in there. I'd send them to like the football clubs, and I'd get them back. So it was weird sitting in a dressing room with these players and people that I'd sort of seen on telly, and a couple of them I wrote to and got their autograph. In all fairness, so it was a bit weird.
Yeah, no,
I'll get that conversation.
I've got your autograph at home.
I know, but then that became a little bit, and that's where sort of my story. I talk in depth about this in the book, how I've really found that difficult.
Yeah.
Not going in there, not being able to just sit down and just relax and be myself and like take everything in and sort of be myself from day one. I felt like I couldn't do that. Strange feeling. Yeah. And like almost retreated a little bit back into my shell, like I didn't belong there, like I shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And then that sort of didn't help me in terms of my confidence and things. And the person that I was before I was a footballer, suddenly that person evaporated almost instantly. Yeah. And I struggled to get out my shell. And I've tried to talk about that as much as I can in my book, about that sort of connection with becoming something so quickly and not feeling like you belong doing that.
I think it's understandable. I mean, anyone thrown in to a situation where, you're this fan, like you have been for years, and you like say you're playing football at, like you say, a decent level, but this isn't just a couple of leagues above. Like this is the top. This is the best league in England, or arguably the world. So to go from that and being in that dressing room, like you said, having that mental toughness to kind of look around and go, wait, I don't belong here. Like, these
Yeah.
guys have been playing at this league and this level
Yeah.
for years now.
Mhm.
I think that's completely understandable. Yeah, I think anyone would struggle with that. That's a massive,
A lot of
massive
pressure.
jump.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know really at the time that, you know, no one was really putting me under pressure, but
Yeah,
like, I think subconsciously, just pressure, just almost, I don't know whether it sort of affected me mentally in that way as well. And although like I say, no one put pressure on me, it was just different emotions that I'd never felt before. Do you know what I mean? I don't even know whether it was pressure or what. I probably can't even say what it just was different feelings inside of my head, and like allowed me not to be my normal, natural self that I would normally be in certain situations, you know?
yeah. Yeah, no, like I say, I understand that. It's your own mental pressures that you'd put on yourself in them scenarios. I think
Yeah.
we all react differently in different situations that we've been in. That we've maybe reacted, and then, like you say, after you've had time to reflect on it, you've gone, I've never been like that. Why did I even do that? It's just your natural instincts that kind of kick in, that you don't even know why.
I don't even think that it hit me straight away. I think that, to be honest, when I look back and I think of the way that I sort of ended up when I joined Middlesbrough, I think that a lot of the issue and the pressure that had been building over a certain amount of years in my time at Derby, I think that sort of suddenly released in some respects. Not released as in it made me better. A lot of it come to the forefront of things when I joined Middlesbrough, when I was expected to almost... When I joined Derby, I wasn't expected to perform instantly. That's the reality of that.
Yeah.
Whereas when I joined Middlesbrough, there was a certain different feel about things that, oh, right, okay, I'm coming in now. Someone's paid some big money for me now, and I'm going to have to perform. And I think that a lot of the feelings that I'd sort of just swept under the carpet and sort of laid dormant for a lot of years suddenly rose to the surface. And I always felt a simmer. And that affected me quite considerably, really, when I made that move to Middlesbrough.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Derby, I know Matty wanted to ask you one question before we got onto Boro.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, mate, obviously Derby being at that level and being in the Premier League, especially, I know we've just touched on it there, but like, especially at that young age, for a lad who hadn't been in football for that long, like, did you take any, like, was there anyone in the dressing room who sort of gave you any advice, or was there anyone who you sort of became close with and they would sort of guide you along the way, especially because you were still a young footballer at that point?
No, to be honest, I was very standoffish. I was very observant. I watched a lot of things that went on.
Yeah.
And almost trying to learn the job in my head, physically, mentally. But I wasn't the type of person at the time that was going to sit down and just say... I never wanted to admit to anybody that was struggling.
Yeah.
I would never want to admit that because... No, I don't know. Maybe I should have done, or maybe I should have just said, look, someone just show us what you do or what you wear or what you drive or how you carry yourself. I think that would have helped me. Of course, if I look back and I think, what should I have done? I should have, you know, spoke to the coaches, spoke to the manager, and you know, somebody took me under their wing. But I think everyone had their own agendas. Everyone was trying to win their place in the team, and I came in not as a first team player. So I sort of went in at a level where there was other lads similar to me who were sort of, you know, fighting to get into that sort of first team situation. And I just sort of, you know, went along with what they did, what they said, how they felt, but never had really anybody that helped me really. But again, that, like I say, that's my own issues. You know, I'm not, there's no one to blame there saying, oh, well, I wish somebody had helped me, because I'd never asked for help. So if you don't ask for help, and I've learnt that, you know, in later life, and I learnt that towards the end of my career. It's only, you know, through some experiences or, you know, some good, some bad, that you learn from.
Yeah.
So, and that is something that I hope when people pick up my book and read it, that, you know, they can resonate with themselves and go, well, I don't want that to happen to me. And I would hate that to happen to me. Because if I had the opportunity of reading my book before I become a footballer, I know it would have helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really where you know, that help things is. And so footballers, you know, they're very selfish people. You know, they look after themselves. There's a lot of egos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of narcissism about. You know, it's just the way of the world. You know, I saw that from a first hand, and you kind of think, well, how do you act? How do you behave on nights out? And you know, how do you deal with fame? How do you deal with money? All these things that I was never like geared up to deal with, suddenly were like being thrown at me, and I was trying to like almost juggle plates. You know, not juggle plates. That's a
spin.
Spinning plates. You know, I was going over it, and I was just trying to keep everything up. And my football for me was my release. That was the one thing where I could get on the training pitch, or I could play for the reserves, or you know, or travel with and that was almost my release. And everything else was just like I was trying to like wing it as best I could to get through from A to B to C to D.
Yeah, like a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, that's quite awesome. You know, I mean, we're doing a fundraiser for Mind at the moment. So if you want to donate, we highly recommend it. Great charity.
Just dropping that in there.
Not saying you have to, Malcolm. That wasn't a plug for you. But yeah, I mean, mental health is something that, you know, we're quite close to, and yeah, I mean, I don't have the life experience that you do. I'm not calling you old, of course, but you know, I'm 19.
I wouldn't be offended.
You know, I'm 19 now, and I mean, just to think about suddenly being thrust into a changing room with the likes of, let's say, Johnny Elson, you know, because he's a cracking baller. You know, that would be a lot for me to handle. Not to mention, you know, the pressures.
I'm going to admit it now. I don't think I could do it.
No,
I'm going to say I don't think I could do it. Like, so honestly, fair play to you, mate. Fair play if you'd be able to handle that much.
It's interesting. It's really interesting because a lot of the things that you were saying there is from like an outsider, like you say, from that fan perspective. You kind of see like a footballer with rose-tinted glasses, and being from, you know, a fan that to then go into a player, you don't actually think and ask them questions about, oh, well, like, how should I behave, or what should I wear, and all these things going through your mind that, you know, when you're a player, all them things then become so real, and you will have them questions. But from a fan, you just kind of see it from the outside.
Yeah.
Kind of go, oh, well, yeah, they go to training every day, lucky them. They get paid to play football, lucky them. And you don't see that side of football. You really don't.
No, and absolutely right. And it's interesting to see you say that, like, sat there at 19, you think, well, no, I don't know whether I could do that. And honestly, that is, you know, I think I just I didn't have a choice. You know, didn't have a choice.
Well,
exactly. In some respects, like it was like, well, this is what you wanted. This is your dream. It's there in front of you. You know, there was never a decision there that I would never. Oh, well, this is going to really, you know, it sat in that sign that contract at Derby and going, oh, you know, somebody comes into you on your shoulder and goes, by the way, this is going to affect you, this mind, mentally. You know, in a few years' time, you're going to have this move to Middlesbrough, and it's all going to come to the surface, and you're going to feel this, that, and the other. And well, you know, I'd have still done it, of course, but you know what I mean. You'd have had them sort of doubts probably reaffirmed in your mind a little bit and things. And you know, the way that my story goes, it wasn't. You know, I didn't come to the end of my career and achieve everything that I wanted to achieve. I achieved, in some respects, like my ultimate dream when I was at Derby County was to play at Old Trafford and score the winning goal in the Stretford end. That was my one dream when I was a child to do. So, you know, when you talk about my story and how I came into football and me to be able to achieve that against my heroes was, you know, I've got my moment. You know, if I hadn't ever done that and you know, my career went hugely downhill at Middlesbrough and the end of my career was a disaster. If I hadn't have achieved that one thing where I can always look back on, you know, and say that I did, I don't know how I don't know whether I could have looked back. I could look back with pride about what I achieved, but at the end of the day, I achieved one of my boyhood dreams. So not many kids can can say that when they were growing up, and especially how I got into football to do that was ginormous. And even when I look back now, I think to myself, you know, oh God, was that really me that did that? You know, on the back of the book, there's a picture at Old Trafford, me celebrating with David Beckham in the foreground, and think, oh God, you know, England captain at the time, and you know, just weird to look back and things like that, and just remember some of the players you played against and with, and just a bit surreal, really, when I look back and reflect on that time as a footballer, because I'm a big football fan again now. You know, I do the Fantasy Football League and all that, and I watch the games. I never miss a game now in England, and you know, I've fell deeply back in love with football and things, and then sort of to realise that I did all that, and I can go on the Premier League website, and I'm sort of 200 and, not that I've looked recently, but I think the last time I looked.
Yeah, what were you saying there? Sorry, Malcolm, before you were rudely interrupted by Zoom.
Not that I look at the Premier League website, but it's always nice to know where I am in the list of all-time goal scorers in the Premier League, because people go past you all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you can, and I think the last time I looked, I was like 236th, I think, in the history of the Premier League. So there's only 235 people in the world that have scored more Premier League goals than me. So
and when you think about that, like,
but that
it's quite big.
Going to go down. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's never going to get any better than that.
Yeah, of
I'll
course.
check it every day if I were you. So
I know. Yeah, I
But
100% would check it every day. But no, still, that's some achievement, and yeah, like you say, it'll still go down. But to say that you've already done that, and you know you're at that level where there's got to be people after you that's got to, you know, and we're talking, you know, that's still a good, what, like 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, I only played sort of three, I don't know, how many full seasons did I play?
Well, three, yeah, 3.5 maybe.
No, I'm not, you know, it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but if I'd have stayed injury-free, I'd have liked to think I'd have been up there with the 100 club if I'd have stayed injury-free.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, just it would have been the amount of matches I played, because, you know, that when I look at people that have got to 100, you know, I played with, you know, a few of them, you know, Crouchy I played up front with for England, Defoe as well. So, you know, there's lads there that I've played with and seen what they've gone on to achieve. And, you know, they're lucky in the respect. And a lot of these players, you know, when they get the accolades and, you know, they're at the top of the charts for a reason. They stay like Messi and Ronaldo have. They've stayed injury-free their career. Then they've been lucky, because, you know, that wasn't the case for me. And I had, obviously, I was in professional football for 11 years and spent, how many of them injured? Probably six years injured.
Yeah, about 6 years on the table. Yeah.
So, you know, when you put, I was injured more than I was fit, you know, that's,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like no one really wants that. You know, when you set out in your career and you go, I think the one thing that, you know, in your life that you hope's right is your health, isn't it?
Of course.
If you're injured,
especially when your health is essentially your profession.
Yeah, of course.
I mean? Yeah.
Dealing with
injuries
and things like that. You know, again, when you think, was I accustomed to things? You know, was I accustomed to being a professional footballer? No. Was I accustomed to be a professional footballer that got in the first team? Suddenly you're playing in front of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000? No. Was I acclimatised to be a player that had a big move? No. Was I a player who acclimatised when he got injured? No. So all of these things that you're dealing with them for the first time with no real help. Like, there wasn't the help around yes, you had physios and you had, you know, people around you who were advising you, but not really anyone you could sit down with and go, how are you feeling today? You know, what's going on in your head today? And you end up dealing with a lot of stuff yourself. And that's where sort of the mental health issues that I'd experienced pretty much the whole of my Middlesbrough career, apart from 2 games I remember.
Yeah.
That I remember 2 games that I played at home. There was a game against Charlton at home when I scored, and there was a game against West Brom.
Right.
they were the only 2 games in my Middlesbrough career where I felt anywhere near 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, just before we get onto that, then how did the Boro move come about? And yeah, like talk us through that, and obviously joining Middlesbrough.
It was Steve McLaren and Steve Round. They were the 2 people who were heavily involved in the move. Obviously, Steve McLaren manager, Steve Round first team coach, stroke assistant manager. And obviously I knew them 2 from Derby because I was with them at Derby. That's where the connection come in. That's where I knew that they wanted to sign me. And I just had to wait until the January transfer window in 2003 in order for that to happen. Didn't happen for me in the summer. Massimo Macaroni moved in the summer instead of me. And I had to wait a few more months until I signed into the club, and then ended up signing in instead of like a marquee striker signing. I ended up signing with 2 other players, Chris Rigger and Mike.
Yeah.
That bothered me a little bit, in all fairness, because I was expected to sign in like as a big money signing a few months earlier, and then suddenly I was just sort of felt like I was sort of sold on the cheap a little bit because Derby was trying to money at the time.
As if you were, I know what you mean. There was an expectation there. So, that they'd kind of come in, said originally what was going to happen in the summer. That doesn't happen. It's only a few months, really. I know you get to like halfway through the season. But then to come in, obviously, with Chris Rigger, I can understand that, as if you were a little bit second bestie.
Yeah, I was dealing with a relegation as well. So just been relegated from Derby.
Of course.
We were playing rubbish in the Championship. So all of a sudden, like, well, why are you not scoring goals in the Championship? Totally different league.
Yeah.
Say that because it is. But to play in, we were just like the team that everyone wanted to play against. We were the stadium everyone wanted to come to Pride Park. And like, it just was a disaster first sort of few months. And obviously my mental state of mind was, well, I'm a Premier League footballer. I want to be in the Premier League. I want to be in the Premier League. So, to have to play a few months in the Championship and then move into Middlesbrough when I did, like, I don't know, I wasn't an afterthought. I knew he wanted to sign me, but like the level of transfer fee and the wages and everything like that I should have been going into there was nowhere near what it should have been.
Yeah. Could, like I say, completely understand that as well. Like we were just saying there about the expectation, and about kind of, like you said, how you thought it was going to be, and then getting there, and then the reality hitting you, and it not being like that. That's another thing, mental wise, to add on to how you were already feeling.
Definitely, because he picked Michael Ricketts up front. It was at Liverpool away. Was the first game that I was involved in. Chris Rigger was started at the back, and then Michael Ricketts started at front. I was sub. I was like, oh, well, this is, what I mean? I did not how I sort of pictured it being.
Yeah, you didn't think it was going to be like that.
Funny enough, he put us in the next game against Sunderland away when Chris scored 2 and I scored 1. That was me. That was my full debut. So the 2 Premier League teams I made my full debut for, I ended up scoring on my full debut. So that was nice to do that as well, especially because I didn't really know at the time how big a game that was for the Boro fans.
Yeah.
Because it was always, to me, when I played for Derby, it was Sunderland, Newcastle was the Derby, but I kind of understood that pretty quickly. Yeah. And how good the Boro away support, I'm not slating the home support, but the away support was fantastic. It was second to none.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. They were brilliant at Anfield in my first game. And I just remember coming out the tunnel at the stadium, I was like, wow, we've brought a few fans here. This is tremendous. And to be able to score in front of them as well in my first start was, look back fondly at that day, because it was you want to announce yourself, and I wanted to go in there.
Yeah, of course.
I knew the club were crying out for a goal scorer, and I was youngish as such. What was I, 23, 24 when I went in there. English, I knew the Boro fans would got straight behind me, and they wanted me to score goals week in, week out. And I felt that straight away from the fans. And like I say, I played in that game. There was a couple of others, like I say, the Charlton and the West Brom game, which I scored in both. Like, my football, I remember thinking, I'm in a bloody good team here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They got around me. I didn't have that feeling at Derby. You know, I looked around, I got, you know, the players that I had alongside me, George Boateng and Gareth and Ugo and Schwartz in goal.
Yeah.
You know, Frank Kadru. You know, they were just really, really good players.
Yeah.
And I just remember a great manager, coaching, and everything the training ground was brilliant. So even though I was struggling a little bit off the pitch a bit with stuff and that adaptation of moving house, moving away from where I was settled as well, the move and things and stuff. I just tried to get through the end of that season, really. Signed in the January. I wanted to get myself, there was no relegation to worry about. Boro were they finished 8th, 9th or something that first season I was there. So it was just nice to be in a team where there wasn't that. I played in a Derby team where we were just like fighting every game to
every single game, yeah.
It was just nice to play in a team, and I was thinking, well, you know, we're in this one.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back, you know, that pre-season, you know, sort of fully fit, raring to go. And obviously I had a bit of a nightmare that pre-season because I had a double operation in the summer, which knocked me back hugely. Yeah, I tore my groin against Man City, third from last game. There was Birmingham, and I think it was Birmingham, Bolton, and Tottenham were the last 3 games. I think the Tottenham game won 5-1. Really good performance. We wore the new next season's kit for that home game. So I played the last 3 games with a torn groin. No one knew about it. I came off in the couple of games, but you know that sort of bothered me a bit as well because you know when you're not 100% and then suddenly
of course, you're not at it, are you?
Fans don't know, and like I say, I completely tore my groin off the bone. It was as bad as you could get, but I didn't know at the time. So I double up in the summer, and then came back, missed most of pre-season. So from that, you know, it's simple for me to say that, but from that last 3 games, so I played Charlton, West Brom, and that was the last time I was ever myself, ever 100%.
I think that for us, I mean, we just spoke to Phil Spencer, who he's a writer for TalkSport. He's got his own book out now, and he speaks about you quite heavily throughout his book. So if you haven't already read that, like, I would recommend going to give that a read. Not just read about yourself, but it is interesting. And what's most frustrating is you could see how important that you were when you were involved and how vital you were. Some of the goals that you scored that at the time you wouldn't have even realised were that important. And I remember them first few games in the Carling Cup. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm only 21, so I was only like 3 at the time. But looking back and reading, watching the games and stuff, you scored some really, really important goals in the lead up to obviously.
I wouldn't go too far. I scored the only goal in the second round against Brighton.
Yeah, that was massive.
Yeah, I didn't realise at the time. So that was just before my injury. I played. There was a couple of games. So I was struggling for fitness at the start of that season. Played a few games in and out the team because I wasn't feeling myself. I was nowhere near 100% fit.
Yeah.
I was sub against Brighton. I came on, and I'd actually missed a penalty in the opening game of the season against Fulham at it was Loftus Road, I think, because they were using QPR's ground.
Right.
So I'm thinking, I don't want this to go to penalties. I do not. So I was like,
That added pressure on yourself.
Yeah. Trying to get the winning goal and ended up scoring there. And then I think it was a home match against Wolves that I played 45 minutes in. And then in the November, I broke my leg. So I missed. I played in one game and I missed the rest of the tournament, obviously including the final, which was, you know, Boro fans. I would love to come on here or on any, you know, interview that I ever have with Middlesbrough fans or whatever, and say how much I love that Carling Cup run.
Yeah.
but I hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Your honesty. That's what we want. Your complete honesty.
I went to that final and I wanted Boro to win. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You know, there was a way that I was internally cheering for Bolton. There was that they were my teammates out there on the pitch.
Yeah.
But it's horrible. It was horrible, horrible not being able to be any part of it. It was soul destroying. And, you know, the way that I was treated as well for the final, not being involved in anything. I was up in the stand.
There was no. I was in the dressing room or no. So you were like cast out like as if you were a fan again.
Yes.
Wow.
So you'd had this. You'd had this massive jump from being from a fan to then being a player, and you've gone through your career. You've struggled mentally. You've had injuries, and they'd just treat you as if you were just a normal fan.
I'm morphed into a supporter when I was at Boro. I watched more games in the dive behind Steve Gibson than I played. Like, and for me, it was a little bit of a full circle for me because I was there. I was as a football fan, and I was the games and things, and like, you know, you go along, and to be honest, I didn't want to go along to the matches, but you had to, and it affected me mentally going along to the matches because I got out the car, fans would recognise you, then what would they ask you? When you're fit. But one didn't ask you, 50 asked you, or 100 asked you.
Yeah.
So you almost like, you know, felt like you're putting your tin hat on a bit and going out to the ball, to be honest, because it was like, it was horrible.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
you know, having to go through that and being injured, I don't think I ever dealt well from adversity and setbacks, but being injured and going through a time where it was so good to be a Middlesbrough fan was even worse for me. And I know that people will say, well, it's not about you, it's about the club. It is, but I'm myself and I have to deal with my own emotions, don't I? So I can only express
of course.
the way that I was feeling at that time, and the way that, like you say there, that for the final, that, you know, I just felt like I should have been part of the team and the celebrations and been in the dressing room at the end of the game on the pitch.
Yeah, you played a part in it.
Yeah.
I mean, the club would do that to me, but they did. So,
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how tough that must be to kind of. I mean, obviously, your book is talking a lot about the reality of the dream. You know, you got that dream. You got to win silverware, and you were kind of watching from the sidelines. You were looking on, you know, almost like you hadn't been involved at all. I mean, I can't imagine how.
I mean, let's say, for example, you don't score that goal against Brighton. Like, it might not have even been a thing. So, for me, what led up to that? What was your relationship like with McLaren? Did that have any effect on it? Was it anything to do with that, or
there was one or two injured players, and they didn't want the injured players travelling with the squad.
It was just as simple as that.
Simple as that. So they didn't want the injured players. There was only, I think there was me, Stuart Parnaby, I think there was Carlo Nash. There was only 3 players, so it wasn't like there was 30 others.
Yeah.
And decision that we were going to travel along with a mixture of directors, club legends, you know, people. So we travelled by ourselves. We had I was only just out of plaster cast at that time as well, so I was struggling with my leg a bit because, well, I'm sure as we'll go on, but basically I had a broken leg at the time.
Yeah.
So I had to walk from this hotel it was about a mile. Bear in mind, I just come out of plaster cast and still did have a broken leg. I had to walk through all the Boro fans, like double checking me, like going, is that what? Why is he walking through the? You know what I mean? Like going up, walking all the way up to the top tier of the Millennium Stadium, wasn't it? That we played at.
Yeah, in Cardiff.
Just standing amongst the fans, like crazy.
It's actually mind blowing because, like you say, when we go back to being a fan and seeing players and things like that, and even injured players. I mean, we've had a few this season. Sammy Amiobi, Darnell Fisher, they've had no involvement at all this season. Yeah. And you don't see it like that. You don't look at it like that. So it's really intriguing, but sad as well to find out that's kind of the way that it was and the way that you played a part in that, but you didn't have any involvement in the final.
Yeah. So so it was just a bit of a weird situation really to be involved in. You know, they organised a dinner. Was it not the next day at Tall Trees? It was a day after, celebratory dinner, and I didn't tell them to stuff it, but I didn't go. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame. None of us could blame you, really.
You know, and maybe I do look back at my time and I think, well, should I have swallowed it a bit and should I have just gone? But do you know what? No, I got that right. I called that right.
Yeah. Well, that was gonna lead on to my next question. I mean, do you have any regrets at your time at Boro? You know, the decision that you made there was pretty valid to me. I'm sure the lads could agree. But yeah, from what you can think of, would you say you had any real regrets at the club?
The regrets for me are not achieving what I set out to achieve when I joined the club. My ambition when I joined Middlesbrough, and I had this conversation with Steve McLaren when I signed.
Yeah.
Steve wanted to play for England,
Yeah.
right? And I wanted to play for England, and I wanted to be a regular goal scorer, and you know, not one, you know, where I was playing in a struggling team at Derby. Bear in mind, I'd scored goals pretty regular at Derby, and I was, you know, there was no supply line really. When you had King Clancy, that was it. We had no creativity in midfield. We had no wide players. So I was feeding on scraps really for a few seasons at Derby. So I kind of knew that, and McLaren knew that I was a guy who could get on the end of things. And I think that's my biggest regret, is going in there with the mindset of achieving real good things, winning something. Because we talked about that when I signed. We're here to build a team to win something for this football club. To not do what I'd sort of set out to do and have an absolute nightmare, like a torrid, like few years where it left me soul destroyed when I walked out, you know, in was it the May or June 2007, where I was like, I cried myself around the training ground when I was saying bye to everybody, which I did. And I'd never thought I'd do that because I never really showed my emotions. I think I cried twice at Middlesbrough Football Club. Once when they told me I broke my foot after I'd been out, I don't know, for about the previous 3 years. And the second time I cried was when I left the club.
Yeah.
And that was it, because it was just a disastrous time in my life, in my career. Everything that, you know, I'd built up when I joined there was just shattered beneath me and left me in a position where I sort of didn't know whether I actually wanted to be a professional footballer anymore from my experience at Middlesbrough, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard listening to, because I mean, I've struggled with mental health myself. So, I mean, have you got any advice or anything that you'd say that you learnt about yourself mentally, physically, that you could pass on to, maybe, you know, there could be a footballer out there that's maybe listening to this that's going through something similar. Is there anything that you took from that you could maybe, you know, that person that wasn't there for you, what would you say to someone that might be in a similar situation to yourself?
In some respects, it's difficult if you're dealing with adversity for the first time, because you don't know how to deal and react with it.
Yeah.
I had the ability to go to the well like 5 or 6 times. And I always remember when I went to the well the first time, I always told myself mentally that I'll come back bigger, better, stronger, faster, quicker. And I never forget that from the first injury. And everyone said that. And then the problem that I had, if that had have happened, that would have been the making of me.
Yeah.
To come back from adversity and to get rid of adversity and to come back as that player where everyone told me that's how I'd come back, that would have made me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the experience that I went through personally is it happened again, and again.
There's only so much you can take, isn't there?
That's where I struggled, and where I certainly didn't have the answers. I couldn't wave my magic wand and make my bone heal when I broke it, or my foot heal when I broke it. You know, so when you say I don't know whether I could have done anything differently. I wish I'd have opened up a little bit more about my struggles and not held on to them and made me a little bit angry and resentful about things. You know, sometimes I'd come away from the Riverside Stadium and like we'd score a last minute winner. I'd be in the car park and I was so relieved I weren't there to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, my God, because I know that if I'd have been there and seen it, it affected me mentally. And it's them sort of feelings and thoughts and emotions that if I'd have described them to somebody and maybe could have opened up a little bit and maybe just offloaded them. And I know that's an easy thing for me to say when you say you need to talk to somebody, but I was bringing, certainly at the time in my personal life, I was bringing all the nightmare home. All the nightmares were being delivered and there was nobody really taking it away from me. I was having to deal with everything. Yeah. So I would say professional help would have helped me. You know, had I have gone to speak to somebody totally separate, probably didn't know anything about me, nothing about my journey, about where I'd come from, what I'd done. If I could have maybe sat down there and spoke openly and honest to somebody who could have maybe helped me out with that little bit of hold, maybe think differently, feel differently. But I didn't have that. So I shut myself up and I tried to deal with stuff myself. And when you do that, there's only so much, as you probably know yourself, there's only so much you can deal with. Do you know what I mean? Before all of a sudden you start feeling a little bit ill yourself. You start feeling a bit, you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to go out of the house. Yeah. And that's really where I found myself. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It was something, when I say to you, I was injured for 6 years. When you think now, right, we'll speak again in 6 years, and you go through what I went through, or anyone go through what I went through, honestly, it's bloody hard. Do you know what I mean?
6 years, it's not, that's a long time. Yeah. Especially when you talk about football career, you're talking, 15 years, if you're lucky. And 6 years, that's near enough half of that. That's the difference. Well, for example, Ben there, saying he's 19, that's like him being 13. It's a crazy difference. And that's a complete different stage of your life or, your career in that respect. It's not a short period of time.
With regards to time, when I think 6 years, I sort of break that down to sort of injury. It was like 9 months, 12 months, 18, you know what I mean? I think sort of breaks down itself in terms of my injuries, because I other than that sort of last few sort of months of Southgate being the manager and stuff, when I say I was fit and the club say I was fit, but I wasn't the same player. Do you know what I mean? It was like there's a difference between being fit and being the same player that you were, say 4 years before. Yeah. Because I was nowhere near. I was all about pace and things, and my pace, I'd lost half a yard, so I was never going to be the same player.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with Gareth? How did that go towards the end of Boro?
It's very good now. I mean, obviously he's wrote the introduction to my book. I respected him tremendously as a player, as a captain. I always felt it was a bit of a strange situation being the manager because I got on so well with him as a player. Yeah. Laugh and jokes. We were injured quite a bit together. Spent a lot of time with him in the gym. Spent a lot of time through rehab in the physio rooms. So to suddenly have that man where I've described there as suddenly my manager was a bit strange. And the feeling that I had, it was a feeling that every player had. So that's why it didn't work out for him at Boro. It came too soon for him. But I'm not surprised with what he's achieved now because he's such a good bloke. He's such a decent guy. He respects the players. And he does know how to get the best out of players as well. And is perfect, really, for the role he's in at the minute. Yeah,
yeah. No, 100%. Do you miss playing?
Oh, how many times have I been asked that question? That's the classic ex-footballer question. I miss times of my life where I wish I could go back and experience what that felt like to score that particular goal or have that particular moment or, run out at a particular stadium. I miss them. Yeah. But, in all fairness, when I sort of put my career into a washing machine and it comes out, I'm not really happy about what I achieved. No. In that respect, but nevertheless proud that I lived out my boyhood dream. Yeah.
That's how you've got to see it, isn't it? I mean, for someone that's been through so many struggles and, you've had so many setbacks in your career, so many disappointments, and like you say, when you talk about it as a whole, it's not good. Like, but you've got to see it. You've got to pick them positives and go, yeah, you know what? I am 200 and whatever on the all-time list for the Premier League goal scorers. You know, I did play for my country. I did. You know, you have to see it like that. Otherwise, it was all for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. And I'm glad that I can reflect back on my life and realise that I did achieve that, and them things that you've mentioned there, I am proud of.
Yeah.
And I've got 3 boys now, and they'll be immensely proud, or they are immensely proud. One's too young to realise that I used to play, but my 2 older boys are immensely proud, and I can only imagine what they feel about their dad writing a book and things about their life and career and things. I think reflecting on what I've achieved and how much I've learned and grown in the years since retirement from football, and learned to live with myself again, and not like being in that bubble of being a professional footballer and living out of a lifestyle and a life that wasn't real, that was never real, almost like you're living almost for other people rather than yourself. And then you come out of that and you're trying to find yourself again. You're trying to find the person that was that before a footballer. Then, I've managed to sort of do that really, and I can look back with pride, and not look back as though I'm talking about someone in the third person about, well, Malcolm Christie, the footballer, and I am the same person. I know that, but I live a hugely different life than I lived as a footballer now, away from football, and I have gone full circle with it. I'm back in love with football. I can talk glowingly about it. I like now being able to reflect back on my career. I think as we started off talking here, it's a good story. I think that people will relate to it in any way, shape or form. And I think that the way that my story's gone, I think that even if you're not a football fan, I think you can probably get something out of it, the way that
100%,
that my life sort of went, and the direction that it took before, during and after my football career. So I just hope that people come on board with the book, the teams of the fans of the teams that I played for, plus any other one that's sort of interested in a good story, because I think that I think it's a good story. So hopefully people will come on board with it.
I mean, not only is it a good story, I'd say also it's helpful for people to get perspective of dealing with the things you've dealt with. Relating.
There's not a lot of people that, like Ben was saying there, that can go through all of that, and that that journey. Like Ben was saying, you've taught a lot of people a lot of lessons, and you're sharing that now.
Yeah, I think so, and you're right. I think the only thing that I probably didn't achieve as a footballer was myself personally, like winning. That where I can talk about, we won the Champions League, or we won, But in some respects, there's only a minute, small amount of players that actually do achieve that. Whereas I suppose my journey and what I achieved in football, I pretty much went through everything that you can imagine going through. I went through, and not just during football, but before football and after football as well. So there's pretty much everything, anything and everything that you say, well, have you done? Yeah. Have you done? Yeah. You know what I mean? You can kind of got like the world's biggest checklist of world experiences or life experiences that I've kind of been through.
Oh God, be endless.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're here to talk about your book primarily. Could you sort of summarise? I know we've pretty much done it a lot, but could you sort of summarise what it's about, and sort of like what sort of inspired you to write it, and what sort of the inspiration was there?
I suppose I always had ringing in my ears that when I got into football, my mum always said that one day, son, someone will write a book about your rise into football. She said that to me when I signed professional, and you kind of at the time go, oh yeah, whatever. But she was, in all fairness, she was right. So
crystal ball.
And I'm glad. What I am glad of is, in some respects, the way I came out of football left me not wanting to talk about football. So there was no way that I could have done this book in 2009 when I retired, because I didn't even want to associate myself with being a footballer. So I've had to have that journey, that sort of from 2009 retiring to where I'm at now in 2022. And the way that my story has ended up, I've almost ended up where I began.
Yeah.
That's a cliche that I've gone full circle, but I haven't. So many things that have happened in between. And I've read so many footballers' autobiographies over the years. You know, I'd always take one, and I still do now. So I'll be going away in a couple of weeks, and I'll be looking. I'm not going to be taking mine, obviously, but I'll be looking to take somebody's away with me in the summer. And that's, you know, and I kind of know what the vibe is from a footballer's autobiography as well. And you know, I know I'm not Steven Gerrard, Roy Keane, Ronaldo, Messi. I'm not, you know, my book's not going to sell itself through my name. I understand that. But hopefully when people start reading my story and the word gets out there that, do you know what, this is a hell of a story. Yeah. You know, going from, you know, the upbringing that I had, and, you know, I just like to think that when people read it, and I'm so looking forward, I'm so excited to getting the feedback from people that do read it. You know, I've read it myself. I know the story because it's my story. But, you know,
yeah, be a bit concerned if you didn't.
I know the book so well because, you know, we've written it intensely with Matthew, my author. So, and I just hope that people enjoy it. I really do, because, you know, I'd hate for, you know, to go this far with it and people to go,
yeah,
oh, that was.
yeah.
I'm sure it won't. You know what I mean? I've got a good feeling that, you know, when people pick up the book, I'm hopeful of you know, people like Gareth and Steve McLaren and Steve Brown, that I can, you know, meet up with them, you know, in the near future and you know, give them books personally. And, you know, I've got Niall Horan as well, the lad, big Derby County fan, lad used to be in One Direction. He's wrote my the afterword for my book as well. So,
oh, wow.
You know, I've had a lot of help, and there's people been behind the scenes as well, you know, that have been instrumental to this book. And, you know, hopefully the story's and the strong enough to tick all the boxes that need be for it to be a success.
So is that the main thing you want people to take away from it, that it's a good story and that, like, it's your story? Or would you say there's something kind of like a message behind it? Or is it just you want people to think this is a great story, you just want people to enjoy it?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd say a little bit of both. You know, I wouldn't be against if Hollywood wanted to pick up the story. I mean, you know,
Netflix documentary.
And actresses I've got
watch it
for the role of myself. But you just don't know where things, you know, might take you. You know, whether there's the career openings out there for me. You know, in whatever, you know, I'm obviously involved in coaching at the moment. You know, I'd like to get back into professional football and things. And, you know, you put yourself out there and, you know, yeah, I'm there to be shot at as well. You know, not everyone's going to be positive about, you know, some people who certainly, I suppose, from the Middlesbrough side of things said, well, what who was he, kind of thing, or, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, hopefully, like I say, when from a Middlesbrough perspective, I know where you're coming from, is that, you know, I do reflect on some really good times in the book for Middlesbrough, you know, the players and everything like that. And, you know, it's been so important for me to get out, especially to the Middlesbrough supporters, read what I went through at the club, and then give us some feedback in terms of what you think that I went through there. And I know that people, as you said earlier, you know, you only look at it from a fan's perspective of, you know, if you're out there on a Saturday or you're not, or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. But, you know, from the other side of the fence of a lot of things that I had to put up with and deal with during my time at Middlesbrough that nobody in any field of work should ever have to put up with. And I was a professional footballer at the time. You know, hopefully it'll be a bit of an eye opener, and you know, it's important that side of the story of my life is told, because I've never had the opportunity of saying that, because when I was football, I didn't want to talk about it. So
I think that's the key thing that comes across though, like you sharing your story, because like you say, there's been a lot of judgment, there's been a lot of opinions thrown your way about your story and about you and your career without people really knowing the truth. So I think this, like you say, is a great opportunity, you know, to not only go on podcasts like Under the Caution and this one and plenty of others that I'm sure you'll be invited on, but the chance to write your book. Oh, there's only you that knows your story properly. There's only you that knows what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what you were going through. So for you to really get that out there, and, you know, I'm hoping that a lot of Boro fans, when we share this on our page and stuff, will be able to kind of detach you as like from a player and kind of show a bit of empathy and go, you know what, if I was in Malcolm's position, just being a human being, going through all that adversity, all that disappointment and things like that, how would you feel? And yeah, I'm hoping that when we share that, it'll just raise a bit of awareness to that as well, and kind of look at you in a way and as an example as to,
Yeah,
you know, there's kids there's people in our area, they might have kids that go on to have a good career, but they're plagued with injury, and they can go, you know what, Malcolm Christie shared a brilliant story and he went through this, and a bit of inspiration almost.
Yeah, and this might surprise people as well, that there's as much as in chapters, there's the same amount of chapters of the Derby County story than it is my Middlesbrough story as well. So that might surprise some people, because they'll probably think that in footballing terms, I achieved nothing with Middlesbrough, but I achieved all of my dreams with Derby.
Yeah.
But the story in respect of that is equal in its measure, and for differing reasons.
Yeah, of course.
And that surprised a lot of people when because people will probably think, oh well, he probably just mentions Middlesbrough a little bit. No, I think it's like 8 or 9 chapters of time at Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to touch on the negatives as well, isn't it? You know, and as you mentioned, a lot of your time at Middlesbrough was negative for you, especially. I think that's the key thing. I mean, Jordan touched on it. These footballers, they seem, you know, so untouchable, so high and mighty, you know, like Ronaldo and Messi. I mean, obviously, they didn't go through what you went through, but you know, ultimately, they are just people. They do go through everything that we go through. You know, they may have media training and all that stuff to help through things like this, but you know, to deal with things behind the scenes, you know, I mean, you know, we didn't get onto it, but you know, talking about mental health, and obviously we got on that, but social media, I mean, the growth that's had, I can't imagine what it's like, kind of walking around your house, your phone buzzes, oh, it's another random person, you know, saying they hate me and saying I'm crap. I mean, it can't be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I came before the social media, so I didn't have to deal with any of that, to be fair. And in some respects, the way that footballers lived their lives back in the day, I'm sort of glad there wasn't camera phones and stuff, because like you wouldn't have got away with half the stuff that I sort of ended up getting up to or whatever. You know, be the page of the bloody newspapers every week. So you know, but yeah, absolutely. Nowadays, you know, I can understand how, you know, footballers get people to deal with social media, because, you know, it's not nice. And even in this stage of my career, you know, people have, which they do, you know, I might log on and someone said something negative about me. Well, you know, I'm not going to let that affect me or let that bother me, because, you know, that was as I was a footballer, what was that, 15 or 20 years ago? So I'm not going to let somebody. The thing is, you can't stop these people writing stuff. You just have to. You just have to develop a little bit of thick skin. No one says really you should have to put up with it, but you know, it's just the way of the world at the moment, isn't it? The world that we live in.
Yeah. So going back to the book, you mentioned Niall Horan, or Horton, don't know how